Hey everybody, this is Jay from the Fallen Group in Remax. It's beautiful out finally. Very excited about that. I got my Hawaiian shirt on, and today I want to dive in and I want to talk about earnest money deposit, or known as an EMD deposit, or simply an escrow. So what is it? So when a buyer and seller are negotiating an offer, and a deposit should be part of the terms. So the deposit is basically you're putting it's buying you're putting skin in the game. So a seller is going to take their house off the market. They may or may not elect to accept backup offers, but you're going to be in first position. So in return for you holding them holding some of your money, and that money can be held by the listing agent, which is typical in the state of Rhode Island. I'm sorry, the listing agent's brokerage, which is typical in the state of Rhode Island. A lawyer, one of the lawyers can hold the escrow, or a third party that's agreed upon by the buyer and seller at the time of offer, not when the contract's signed. So that should all be out of the way. So in return, buyers, you're going to be able to do your due diligence. You're going to have your right to have your home inspections. If something comes up scary and you don't want to move forward, or the seller doesn't want to fix anything, as long as it's within your timeline, which is 10 business days in the state of Rhode Island, excluding holidays and weekends, so it's really 14 days total, you can get your money back. If the house isn't appraised and we cannot negotiate, you get your money back. If at the end of the day you cannot get the financing, as long as it's before the contingency deadline, you'll get your money back. And that's all done with a release that must be signed by all parties discussing who's getting it back. Now, 99% of buyers want to buy, 99% of sellers want to sell. But the off chance that there is an issue and the by default, the seller does have the right to retain the deposit. So that's one of the remedies that the seller has. The other one would be suing for specific performance, but most likely it's just going to be try to keep the deposit, cut the ties, and just move on to somebody else, because litigation rather, is very expensive, as you can probably guess, and unless you're dealing with multi-million-dollar properties, or if it's a really something circumstantial, it's probably just going to be deposit and cut loose. So a buyer wants as least amount of money as possible in a deposit. The seller wants as much money as possible for a deposit, obviously. Now, buyers, at the end of the day, everything goes smoothly and you close. That's not a freebie to the seller. Consider it a prepayment of your down payment. So it's just a credit. It's going to be credited to. So you get $5,000, boom, $5,000 is going to be less that you have to take out of your pocket for closing costs and down payment. And if you're 100% financing, unless there's a couple bucks that's owed or needed, you'll get your whole deposit back at closing in a check form. So that being said, this is why I think deposit is somewhat bullshit. And in my experience, 12 years being in the real estate business, 11 years full time, helping hundreds of buyers, and I'm not doing this to pat myself on the shoulders. I'm just saying this to give you some idea of, the years of experience that I have. So I've had about 8 instances where there's been an issue with deposit, and each time there's been an issue with deposit, guess what happens? Nobody wants to sign that release, because obviously if it's the buyer's fault, the buyer wants their money back, and the seller's not signing anything like that. They could elect to, but if that happens, then the money's going to sit in limbo until the issue's rectified. So from 180 days from when the escrow amount is deposited into the escrow account, to from that point to 180 days during that dispute, that money is going to be held at the escrow agent's office, whoever it is. After that, it's going to go to the U.S. General Treasurer's office until the issue is remedied. Now, every single time, those 8 times that I've had issues, guess what happens? They both fight over it. They don't want to have it released. And I've had instances where it's like the debt up, buy is wrong, buy is in the wrong. I had it was like 8, 9 years ago, a house in East Providence, at the closing table. Literally, luckily my clients were, if they signed power of attorney, they weren't in the actual room because they would have flipped their lid. But at the closing table, as they're signing the paperwork, agent gets a phone call, picks up, hangs up. Guys, we got a problem. It seems that the bank made a mistake, and the 203K finance and rehabilitation loan money that we have is going to be short. Buyers are really upset, and they're like, you know what? I don't want to buy this house anymore. There was a little back and forth. I was trying to negotiate with them to, just close on the property. But long story short, did not want to. And guess what happened? We got a release, and it was a release saying the buyers wanted their money back. Now, was the buyers in the wrong? Absolutely. Was it the lender's fault? Absolutely. Should the buyer go and, go after the lender? I would. But at the end of the day, it became my client's issue because now they have a vacant house that they moved out of, no closing, and they were pissed, plain English. So what happened at the end of the day, because they didn't feel like waiting and they didn't want any issues, because when you have that dispute and you have a contract that's kind of floating around, sellers, it's a fine line. You can put the house back in the market. You can go into contract, but I would advise you to talk to a lawyer first because there are things that I don't know because I'm not a lawyer, but there are some issues that could occur if that happens. So my clients just pissed off, decided to, they were like, forget it, let's just negotiate, and they basically got a 50-50. So buyers got 50%, the sellers got 50%, and they walked away from the whole thing and they washed their hands of it, disgusted. And every single time that that's happened, whether it's a dispute, that's always happened. I've never had the issue. Not gonna. Hopefully, I never have any disputes with deposits anymore. But that's never occurred. So that's why, in my humble opinion, it's a bullshit thing. But it is what it is. That's my 2 cents. I hope this was really helpful for you. And look for further,